Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigre Gardenia. I have to say, I had no idea what I would be talking about with Joshua. Joshua Onysko is somebody who has um, just lived. He's done a lot of different things. And when we had our kind of like pre interview conversation, we bounced through so many topics and we decided that rather than trying to fix what we were going to talk about, we would just sort of leave it up and leave it open. And I am so glad we did that because what conversation we ended up having, probably not the most direct plant specific conversation that we've had on the podcast. It's not one of them where we're like just only talking about the plant, but I do want to emphasize here that besides the fact that the conversation was just fascinating because, Joshua just has so much information, so much experience and research that he's done into the world of plastics, which is pretty much what we talked about the entire time, is how to get rid of plastics, how to change up plastics, why is plastic still around, what can we do about plastic, all these different aspects of it. And I really appreciate it because I think it is not natural. Haha, lack of it is natural for us as we start to reconnect back into this plantness. We reawaken our inner plantness. We start to work really close with our plant friends, where things like plastic and the pollution problem in particular that we have happening all around the world become insufferable. It's like the inorganic nature of the products that we use, the different things that we have around our homes becomes impossible for us to support. And it is something that I think we forget that as consumers, we have a lot of power over. And Joshua has a lot of experience in this to help us understand what is possible and how much more than what we really think is possible. So I really do hope that you're going to listen all the way through to the end because there is some great tidbits in there. There's some great products for you to try. There's some great substitutions for you to have. But more than anything, this is about reconnecting back into that part of ourselves, reconnecting with plant kin and realizing that for the good of the plants that you are currently friends with, for the good of the plants that live and support us around the world, not only do plants have the solutions, but we cannot disrespect them by not making changes in our daily life. And while I know that those changes are difficult, I think that this is a great type of conversation to show you that it's really not as hard as you think it is. It's just that we've been conditioned to believe that it's super hard. I myself have made tons and tons and tons of changes, even if some of them are adding recycling on the bottom of the R list, right? Thinking better about reusing and about, rehoming and about, repurposing and all the other types of R's that come, repairing especially, and all these other pieces that come way before we ever get to recycling. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you for being here. Thank you for your changes. And I'd love to hear what changes you're making. Like, are there things that you have found that you've discovered that you've been like, oh my goodness, I wish more people knew about this because this has completely changed my relationship with, plastic. I've been able to get rid of plastic because of this and these are the changes that I've made. Come into the Naturally Conscious community or just comment here wherever it is that you are, whether you're on YouTube or you're listening in a podcast app. I'd love to hear what are the changes that you're making and how is it that your relationship with sustainability and regenerativeness and more than anything, just plastic in general and pollution in general has changed thanks to your relationship with plants. So with that, I'm going to leave you to listen to this fantastic conversation with Joshua Onysko, which is episode 116, How to Green Up Your Bathroom. Welcome to Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigre Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor, certified life coach, and the founder of the Naturally Conscious community. For over a decade, I've been known as a world ambassador for plant advocacy, working closely with plants to share their practical wisdom to help you consciously embody the elements of life that nourish your evolution. In this podcast, I delve into ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways of plants. Together, we'll explore how ecosystem thinking helps you overcome limiting beliefs, understand the true nature of relationships, and live an authentic, impactful life. Alrighty, here we are, Joshua. I don't remember the last time when we had our first little chat, but it's been a while now. So I'm actually kind of excited to see what direction we take this conversation, especially since, kind of like me, you're one of those people with like a CV that is like 7,000 pages, and that's because we cut it type of thing. So I'm actually just as excited as everybody else to ask this question. Who is Joshua?
Mm. So Joshua is a um, high school dropout and a traveler and a serial entrepreneur and an adventurer and someone who is always seeking solutions to problems to help the world.
I like this. I like that last part. Someone who is seeking solutions for problems in the world. I like it. It's very cool. And so, what problem are you currently solving right now?
Right now, I am working on a nut milk maker, and I've been, as we talked about when we first met, I've been vegan most of my life, mainly for animal rights, but also for nutrition. And uh, to me, dairy is one of the worst things that we do on planet Earth is factory farmed dairy. And I also just really don't think dairy is really great for humans. So I've been drinking nut milk for many years. When I first became vegan in my teens, I was making my own nut milk because back in the 90s, the soy milk that was being sold in the market was pretty gross. And, over the years, it's obviously bloomed into this multi billion-dollar industry and the milk tastes better. But from a nutritional standpoint, most of what's on the store shelves is kind of garbage. And so 6 months ago, I started working on this small kitchen appliance that makes nut milk at home, but also has the same nutritional value as cow's milk, which is kind of like the holy grail of milk. It's like, how do you have dairy free milk that's organic and doesn't have garbage ingredients, but has like the protein and niacin vitamin content of milk? So I've solved that problem, and I'll be launching it this summer. And I hope that the problem it solves is twofold: one, getting people off dairy, and two, helping people who may be buying store bought plant milk reduce waste because packaging, and have a healthier alternative for whatever they use milk for: cereal, coffee, baking. You name it, we use milk. I forgot the statistic, but the amount of milk that people drink in a year is kind of insane because I actually don't drink that much milk.
Yeah, I actually don't either. It's really interesting. I only started to drink milk and milk alternatives. I'll be honest, I drink both only because I love matcha, and so I use this teeny tiny bit, probably a few times a week,
Just to lighten it
from
up.
just exactly, and that's it. And so I'll buy one, I don't know, a month
Carton.
type of
Yeah.
thing, one little
Yeah.
container a month. But you are right. I mean, the whole packaging thing. I think so much about packaging, especially luckily where I live, there are alternatives in some cases. I love going to the corner stores or like the little markets around here because they're usually just get butcher paper and whatever it is, whether it's cheese or meat or anything like that. It's just butcher paper and it's super easy. But oh my goodness, the whole packaging thing is insanity of how it goes.
Yeah. So for the past 25 years, I have owned skin and body care companies, and I still do: Pangea Organics and Alpine Provisions. And in my industry alone, the skincare industry produces 127 billion pieces of plastic a year.
I was
And
actually going to ask you about this conversation. So we're going to get into Pangea Organics but I'm glad that you brought it onto this because so I am somebody who I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not a huge makeup person. The only thing I wear is because I'm Cuban. I have like black. under my eyes from when I was born. My mother says she could see me in the crib when my ojeras, as we call them, came out. And she's like, and I've had them all my life. And other than that, it's morely about skincare, right? The idea of really just trying to find the right thing for my body. And it is, as a matter of fact, I was just in Croatia with one of the favorite companies. It's called Hildegard, that I love their product, but I could not bring myself to buy it because it's been forever since I bought a plastic face cream. I cannot seem to bring myself to actually buy a plastic container. And only one company here has a container that is like you buy the glass piece once with the unfortunately a plastic top, but inside is kind of like a pod. And so you just buy the pod that goes inside of it, which is still a pod made out of, but they're trying to move it to like a compostable plastic type thing pod
Yeah.
inside. And then I have found one that's a tin that they make it in a little tin, which is, but I'm just like, I do not understand how all of these brands that claim to be, sustainable, organic, looking at all of these things, still put them inside of a plastic container. Like, is
Well, I
there a
can tell you
reason
why.
for that
Yeah.
other than
It's called
cost?
it's money. That's it.
It's only money.
Well, it's money and supply chain. So we took Pangea and Alpine completely plastic free, like zero plastic, 4 years ago. And what we learned is back in the 80s, all cosmetics and like toothpaste came in these aluminum tubes.
Right.
And then plastic was introduced. The first time I remember a plastic bottle replacing a glass bottle was ketchup. And the whole marketing was no more.
966, which was
Yeah.
the most fun part. Like
Yeah.
we loved
And
doing
so,
that.
back then, no one thought anything of it. And then, 3 years later, this blue bin showed up on your doorstep. Don't worry about all the waste. You can recycle it.
No, you
But
can't.
the blue bin
Not in
is
the
a
US,
lot.
especially.
Yeah. You can't recycle plastic. You can only downcycle. So if it's a plastic bottle today, it might turn into decking or lawn furniture. But inevitably, any plastic we are producing ends up in the ocean or in landfills or in our rivers. And so first it's the cost, because when you stop producing something in mass quantity like aluminum tubes and aluminum bottles and glass bottles, the price goes up. So there's a price barrier. But on top of the price barrier, there's only like seven co-manufacturers left in America that will still fill aluminum tubes, because it's a special machine that's either made in China or Italy. So then you're narrowing where you can make your product,
Right.
and so those are all problems. Um, but at the end of the day, the real reason why people don't do it is it's expensive and it's hard. And the truth is, and I am the person who can say this from a place of authority, people don't care.
I know. I will completely agree with you on that. Like, I find that extremely fascinating. It's so, and we're going to get deeper into the whole plant conversation, but it's one of those cognizant dissonance.
Hmm.
Cognitive dissonance. I can't even say it today. It's been a long day, but it's one of those dissonance that we have where our value system that we claim, and we all do it in some way, to be honest. But like, it's one
Hmm.
of those value systems that we claim to have, but then when push comes to shove, you sort of say, oh, well, like, oh, well, and
Yep.
there's no other solution. And then you just do it and you don't even attempt to do a solution. Like I was saying, from a makeup perspective, like I've done a lot of research, both in the United States as well as here, personal, like not at your level, obviously, but, to try to find the companies that are, either creating something that is refillable. So
Hmm.
I've been lucky enough to find a few. I don't, like I said, don't use that much stuff, but I've been able to find either refillable, where, yes, one of them has a plastic pod, the other ones instead are like a tin, an aluminum pod that you refill certain things with, and or a crayon type thing where, of course, then you use the whole thing, but even the cap of the crayon comes
Is
in
plastic.
plastic, and you're just
Yeah.
like,
Plastic is so cheap. It's kind of, most cosmetic companies are getting their plastic from China, which is even worse because the vast majority of Chinese plastic manufacturers have zero environmental controls.
Right.
So, like a plastic bottle you can buy for 9 cents, whereas our aluminum and glass bottles cost 90 cents.
Right.
But glass and aluminum can be recycled infinitely over and over and over again. And even if a glass bottle ends up in the ocean, it turns into sea glass, no big deal. Um, but very rare it'll end up anywhere other than recycling because it has value.
Mhm.
Plastic has no value. So it doesn't have the value where someone's going to take it and go recycle it. Whereas glass and aluminum actually is expensive. So because we can just we can turn an aluminum bottle into another aluminum bottle over and over again till the end of time. And it's a fairly low footprint to do that because they just melt it down and make a puck, and that puck gets turned into another bottle. And quite honestly, people should be demanding that large corporations only package goods this way
Right.
because they can. They could like Procter and Gamble alone could change the entire ecosystem or supply chain system of packaging overnight by just stopping to use plastic, but it's so cheap and they just keep building more plastic making facilities. They just don't want to do it
And
because
I
because people don't care though. So it's like the second people care, corporations care. So our brands are plastic free. It's probably the fourth reason people buy our product. It's not even in the top three.
Yeah, and I find, and this is why, from my perspective, if I am, and I think about myself as well as my clients and the people that I've worked with and my students and seen their transformation. To me, yes, you could try to solve this with education, which I'm sure there are plenty of people that are doing, and they're really trying to kind of educate people on there are options, blah, 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 blah. But I have found that it's more effective to go the route of if you reconnect to nature, if you really start to create these deep bonds with plants and then, moving on to other species and such, not as objects, because of course, when it's an object, it's super easy for me to do and manipulate and do whatever the hell I want, but
Mm-hmm.
instead as beings, as living beings of which you have a relationship and you co-create with and all these different things, I find that you naturally start to look for these other solutions because that reconnection ends up kind of making you say, well, why would I want to do something that harms my friends, that
Mm-hmm.
harms my planet? And it doesn't happen always through a cognitive part, right? It doesn't happen through like, let me think about it, but you just start to take steps and then it snowballs. Like I was just talking to somebody about, I have a Fairphone because that's another place where people are just completely like, they think one thing about values, but then when it comes to your phone, you're like, well, I just got to buy a new iPhone or a new whatever
What's
phone, Samsung.
Fairphone?
And so Fairphone is the world's most ecological phone. It's kind of the equivalent of what you were talking about in the sense that it is intended for you to have the Fairphone for a long period of time, 8 to 10 years. It's built modularly. You get a little screwdriver with it. Actually, they don't even give you the screwdriver anymore because they say most likely you have a screwdriver, but if you need it, we'll give you a screwdriver. They don't give you anything other than the phone, and they say anything you need, you let us know. And you can open the phone and change all the components. So besides the fact of their sourcing and how they source everything that's on the phone, looking for the best, and they're constantly like looking for updates. It's a Dutch company,
Mm-hmm.
but the phone itself is constructed to be long-term use. The idea that you have this one phone for at minimum 8 years is what they're like, their goal is 8 years to 10 years. And you have like a little app that helps you sort of follow that trend. And then anything that might happen to the phone, you yourself can just update the phone. So you can open it and buy just that piece. And they always tell you, please keep the envelopes that, like when you get the phone, it just comes in the box now, very minimal packaging. And they say, please keep this because if you ever do need to send us the phone, this is the way you're going to send us the phone. And then when you do get like, if you get a component, they say, please send back the original component because then they always have a circular sort of economy set up for it. So it's considered for like, I don't know, the last maybe at a minimum, like 8 years that I've known it, it's like the world's most
And you have one?
sustainable phone. I do. I
Can,
love
can
it.
we see it?
Yeah, of course. Hold on. So here it is. It's just like a regular Android phone. See, it's called Fairphone in the back. Hold on, I'll take the plastic
Yep.
thing off so you can see. So I don't know if you can see, but see how you can see
Yep.
through it. So
Yep.
I can just open this super easily. Where's the
Has
ease?
anybody done any EMF testing on it?
They've done tons of testing. You can see it all from their website. They're really cool people. And so
That's
you
cool.
open it and you'll see that it's like modular. So I can
Hmm.
change the battery. I can open all of this up. I can change the camera. I can change all the different components from it. So their idea is they build it in a way where over time, let's just say, like, for example, my camera, right, as cameras improve, they build it in a way where the new cameras will have the same shape, the same size, and so that you can easily plug it in. And they're always thinking about how is it that I can, if I do need to upgrade anything or anything breaks, I can just do that one little component instead of having to do everything.
Got it.
I absolutely love them. I have actually two because I originally bought one, and unfortunately, when I go visit the US only does 5G now. They don't support 4G. So, but my old one becomes the one that I basically use for all of my friends, like as a loaner for them to have. And a friend of mine who has that one, he's already upgraded, he's had to upgrade or he's chosen to do different things. And it's fantastic. They're such a great company. They also have earbuds like I just got. And it's the same principle of the idea that you're going to have these for 8 to 10 years. And how are they upgradable or maintainable? And then they have an end of life. So they've built it into their way of doing business, that there is an end of life that they have to think about. So please send it back to them, and then they'll completely dismantle it, take out, recycle as much as possible and stuff. It's a super, super cool company, totally worth looking at it. And of course, if you go to tigregardenia.com/Fairphone, you get a discount.
Nice. I'll check it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I love them. And like I said, I think when you reconnect, and so if you go down that angle, then you naturally start to look at these pieces. And so I'm so curious as to, well, besides the fact that, of course, I want to ask you about your connection with plants because, it's kind of why we're here. But I'm also really curious as to what kind of took you down this route. Like, why did you decide? Because it's not an easy problem to solve. I mean, you could have easily just gone with plastic.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started making product. I started making bar soap when I was about 22 years old. And bar soap's easy, right?
Mhm.
Like anybody putting bar soap in anything but paper just doesn't care,
Is it?
which
Is it? It's another
it's
one of those
insane.
things where you're like, seriously, why
Yeah.
is this in
Yeah.
plastic?
I
Like,
mean,
doesn't even.
it doesn't make any sense, but people still do it.
Yeah.
It's called blow wrap. They blow wrap the bar as it comes out of the K press, and it drives me insane. But anyway, when I started, it was really simple. And then we started moving into like liquid products like lotions and hand soaps and body washes. And for a while, we're using 100% post-consumer plastic, which is great because you're pulling plastic out of the supply chain. But
Right.
at a certain point, you realize you're still part of the problem. You're just
Mhm.
lesser part of the problem because you're creating a demand for something, which is why they're creating virgin plastic because they
Right.
can then sell the
Yeah.
secondary
Better
plastic.
is
Anyway,
not good.
yeah.
It's just better.
And then one day I was looking at an egg crate carton and I was like, egg crate cartons are amazing. They protect product really well. And it's actually the last stop of the recyclability of a tree product, paper, is an egg crate carton. After an egg crate carton, you can no longer recycle it. It's done. Um, but it's also very biodegradable, obviously. And so we developed the world's first plantable packaging. We started mixing Genovese basil seeds into the pulp of the bar soap packaging, and then what was protecting the glass packaging was molded fiber, and that kind of set me off on this. How do I make the most sustainable skin and body care company on earth? And so I scuba dive. I was diving somewhere in Central America and just saw like plastic in the ocean. And I was like, this is so depressing. I don't want to make another plastic bottle. And so I went down this journey of finding like really beautiful aluminum, really beautiful glass. I started actually working with a company that Apple invested in about 12 years ago that like made really beautiful molded fiber. So like high end egg crate cartons. So anytime you buy an Apple product now, it's usually in molded fiber. And they actually have done a great job of eliminating plastic in their packaging over the past 10 years. And so at the same time, I redesigned both of my brands, Alpine Provisions and Pangea Organics. I invented the world's first aluminum tube that has an aluminum cap because most aluminum tubes still have a plastic cap. Went down that rabbit hole, and it took 3 years and probably $1.5 million, but now we have completely plastic free products and I can sleep at night. And, and I always like to caveat, and I always say people don't care. And I want to apologize to all the listeners out there who do care, because I am well aware that there are at least 1 million of us in the world who actually do think about these things. And when I say people, I really mean the mass population still does not think about plastic. And I can't emphasize enough. We just got back from 3 weeks in Bali and I was absolutely mortified.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how people consider that like utopia. The people are by far the nicest people I've ever met in my life, but the tourists and the digital nomads that live there have absolutely trashed that island.
That's how
There
I feel about
is
Egypt. Every time I go and like, you're like, really? You just,
there is the most intense amount of plastic
Mhm.
everywhere. Rivers, streams, sides of the road. We went in this like little cove where you see 1 million Instagram models always taking photos, and I went in there because it was so hot. I just wanted to
Wait,
cool
did you take
down.
a photo? Did you take an
No,
Instagrammable photo?
no, I am not an Instagram model. I didn't take any photos. I was so disgusted. I went in there. There was so much plastic in the waves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about one or two pieces. I'm talking about thousands of pieces. And there are Instagram people just taking photos and like not showing the water, just showing this beautiful cove. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so dystopic.
It is.
Um, because, in developing countries, we don't really see the plastic because we ship it away. We might see some plastic on the side of the road or a bottle here and there because we ship it away to a landfill. But the landfills are, something like 48,000 jumbo jets of plastic end up in the ocean every year. So just
Yep.
imagine a jumbo jet after a jumbo jet after a jumbo jet of plastic. And here's the thing no one wants to admit: 55% of all ocean plastic is actually from the fish industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just ghost gear. And if you go on the beaches in anywhere in Southeast Asia, you just see ghost gear,
Right.
thousands and thousands of pounds of fishing gear just washing up on the oceans. And at some point, and I hope that point is very soon, we need to realize that the power of the people, of the consumer, can change this overnight. Corporations are not going to do it.
No,
Large corporations are not going to do it.
I'm always shocked about that particular. I have a good friend of mine here who, over the years, I have slowly trained her because we would go shopping together. And she'd pull out whatever dress. She's somebody who likes clothes, which is great. But she pulls out dresses, and it's all polyester and
Yeah,
plastic fibers
microplastics
and
in the
everything.
ocean.
And I'm just looking at her, going, how do you wear that? And I don't look at her like trying to just shame her into it. Although sometimes I do. I have to
I was
admit,
like, yes, you do. I do the
sometimes I
same
do.
thing.
And then other times I'm just like, doesn't it feel like crappy on your skin? And I think, again, going back to there's different ways to approach it. And I do feel like maybe it is my connection, but my connection to nature means that when I put something like this on my body, when I grab something like that, I feel like crap. Like I
Yeah.
feel it doesn't feel part of me. And it's that inorganic part but it's more than that. It feels, I don't know, soulless, wrong. It doesn't have the energy weight. It doesn't have the connection. There's like, I feel completely disconnected from this thing that is supposed to be something that enriches my life. And I feel like I do not understand. I really don't. It's one of those fundamental things of how human beings do not understand that their pocketbook has the power. Like, how can you keep looking at me and saying, oh, well, it's the corporations? I'm like, the corporations have to bow down to the things you buy.
Yeah.
Stop buying it and we won't have this problem.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
there
people
is
always want to make believe someone else is in control
exactly,
because it's easier. It's
exactly.
a lot easier. It's the same thing with politics, the same thing with corporations. And I think about it in the yoga industry a lot. I go to a yoga class. I'm like, how do you do yoga wrapped in a plastic bag?
I, yes.
I don't get it. I'm like, and how many yoga pants do you need? Because most people have dozens of yoga pants
Okay, I'm
and
gonna, I'm
they're
gonna
all
tell
made
you
out of
this.
plastic.
I'm gonna be honest. I have two pairs of yoga pants, and I think the first one is probably about 12 years old, and the other one is like 10 years old. Like, and I think I have one other pair of kind of soft pants. They're not really yoga pants, but they're just cotton, like bedroom pants that since
Oh,
I do
someone
yoga at
should start a
home.
company called Yoga Plants.
Yeah, and it's like, why do I need more than that? I just alternate. I dated for a while an architect who is prized architect in sustainable design, and he is one of those the real deal, which is so even that is so rare to find in the architecture world. And I loved the way his mind worked because, for example, in his house, he had in his apartment, he didn't have a sink in the kitchen, and I was like, "How do you not have a sink in the kitchen? Like, it's just so weird." He's like, "Well, the bathroom's right there. I can just use the sink there." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're washing big things." He's like, "I don't wash any of that kind of stuff." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I just use the dishwasher." And I was like, "Well, the water and the this." And he's like, "No, no, no." He goes, "Hold on a minute. Let me school you here." And I was like, "Okay."
I have this talk with people all the time.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I didn't understand because, you're in this thing of, "Oh, the water." He's like, "No, no, no." He's like, "Look, I fill the dishwasher in this way and this way and this way. It all goes into the dishwasher. It all goes and then the cycle is this type of cycle and blah, blah, blah. And here is the amount of water that gets consumed when you do it that way. And here's the amount of water that gets consumed. And here's the products that I use in that water in order to do it." And at the end, I was like, you're left with your mouth open going, I understood nothing of the world until now. Like, we have such false ideas about things
Yeah.
because they're not grounded in, like, let me look at it. They're grounded like, let me look at the numbers, the understanding, and also the behavioral changes. Because he says, yes, if you were to use the dishwasher the way you're thinking of using the dishwasher, absolutely, you are now talking about something that is going to be worse than hand washing it. Or even, I am somebody who's super cautious about water. Like, I have a bucket in my sink, kind of old style, British style. I have a bucket. And so when I wash, I save the water and I use it up until, like, it's not possible to use it again because
Yep.
I don't have a dishwasher. So I do it, very cautiously because that's the way I am. But he's like, if you have a dishwasher, he's like, if you learn these little things, all of a sudden it becomes better. And the same thing he was showing me about the clothes wash, like to wash your clothes. He was like, if you just do it this way and you do this and you make this change, then all of a sudden everything is different. And I was like,
Mhm. Yep.
wow.
Sometimes it's not obvious, but the things I want to focus on are the ones that are obvious.
Mm,
Every day when you go to the bathroom, the average like American, I don't know what it is in Italy is using like 17 different products. In those 17 different products is usually about 52 pieces of plastic. And that's the obvious thing. The obvious thing is go out and find brands. And there are more of us. There's probably a few dozen companies that have just said no.
right.
It's aluminum tins, and don't fall for what I call blue washing, which is like, oh, this is ocean plastic. I will tell you, the ocean plastic thing is a huge lie.
Mm,
There's no such thing as ocean plastic bottles. The way it works is if you get your source your plastic from recycled facilities within 2 miles of the ocean, they call it ocean bound, like it could have ended up in the ocean. So that's BS. The bag
well,
in the
and
box thing.
also, if you're gonna be a company that's gonna propose to me, like post, recycled plastic, I want to see your end of life, like
Exactly.
your end of life as a company. Because if you do your job right, then you should eventually not have virgin plastic that you have to recycle. So I want to see, how is your company thinking about the fact that hopefully, if everybody does their thing right and all the companies start to become, recycled plastic type stuff, then in 5, maybe 10 years, you shouldn't exist anymore because there's no virgin plastic to recycle.
Correct.
Because if you continue to talk about the fact that you are a secondary, you're recycling plastic, but as you said, you're only recycling from virgin plastic, then you're just forcing the virgin plastic to exist. So it's like,
Correct.
just take a second and think about this.
And then on top of that, there's plastic in the bottle. So unless you're buying a fully organic natural product, you're buying plastic, you just don't know it, because
Right.
most skincare products are made of petroleum byproducts, and the fragrances are petroleum derived, which are also toxic for you. So again, it's not like that you can find organic, natural, plastic free products. So they're there, but it's up to people's job to switch out what they're using, because if everyone just starts switching, the large corporations, the ones that we really need to change, will change.
Right.
It's that simple.
It really is that simple. I started to do this one day because a friend of mine was asking me, and she was like, "Can you, if people are asking what are the swaps?" And I'm not a big fan of the like swap for something that has a title that it's a
Hmm.
swap kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was just thinking about, just natural. Again, going back to little by steps. Like I'm a curly hair. I love my curly hair. I treat my curly hair really well. I admit the places where I've been able to find, such as, for example, bar soaps, which I have a little mom and pop place that I think she's also in the Netherlands. I love her products, just you buy them from Etsy and they come and it's just like this little paper thing wrapped in paper, nothing fancy about it at
Yeah.
all. And I
Yeah.
absolutely like love her for being able to do that. And and there's some stuff that I'm still searching. There are products that I haven't found. I try to go, aluminum, and then you're trying to find the other solutions because I'm a glass, all those types of things. But then you start making a list and you start going and you're like, wow, there are a lot of things that if we shared also ideas, like for example, I don't know, I have a loofah kitchen a sponge rather than
Yep.
any kind of plastic, which I didn't even know existed. And I was super excited to find it that it's like it's made out of, a sea sponge. I was like, oh, this is
Actually,
fantastic.
loofah is not a sea sponge. People think it is.
Right, you're
Loofah
right.
grows on a vine,
You're
and you
right.
can grow
Sorry.
them in Italy.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of, so it's funny because in Florida, the number one like sea sponge. I used to live with the person whose name here in Dummenher is Sponge, so Spunya. So when I went to in Tarpon Springs, Florida, is the number one sea sponge like capital of the world. So I don't know why the image of the sea sponge just came into my head, but you're absolutely right. Like it's a gourd, so it's super even easier. It's a plant. Sorry, I totally type of thing. But it's this like simple swap, right?
Yep.
That cost you zero because you're still buying a freaking sponge and
Yep.
it lasts forever. Like I have, two that it's just all these little tiny things that, like you said, they add up, right? and
They
and
add
a
up.
lot of pieces of this also, this is my experience and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that the more connected you are, the less you also waste. Like I don't buy in like Costco bulk, anymore. And I also find that even the products that I use, whether it's for my skin or any of these types of things, you're not like pouring the bottle into your hand to put into whether it's your hair or your stuff. Like things last also longer because the quality is higher, the amount that you use is minimal, your body starts to change also. And so therefore there's a reaction, there's a complementary nature to it and an evolution that happens. And you're caring more for the things that you're doing. And so there's a cautiousness that happens that comes just from respect. It doesn't come from
Hmm.
anything else. And I
Hmm.
find that this is something also that we don't give enough space to and acknowledgement to, that it's like your relationship with nature will naturally change the way that you use things, whether you're talking about clothing or whether you're talking about something in your kitchen or your bathroom or any of those types of things. Like you just don't waste the same way. You don't waste water, You don't waste, any of these types of things. Electricity, when you go to the bathroom, it's slightly different. Like everything just starts to change
Yep.
when you really give yourself into this relationship with plants, and you start to say, you are my friend and I want to do what's best for you, not just because it's good for me, but because it's literally good for you too.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the rabbit hole. Like once you start picking away at like what you're actually consuming and how it's affecting your body, food, products, I always say like make a list of what you use the most in a day, like toilet paper, tissue, makeup, cosmetics, soaps. That stuff is like the low hanging fruit.
Right.
And one day you can simply just swap out all those things for the best possible option and support those companies. Like support them because you might think they're big companies. They are small companies. And the bigger they get, the more the bigger guys take note.
Right. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the hard swaps, or what are some of those hard pieces, or maybe the most misunderstood, like the dishwasher one? I mean, seriously, the dishwasher one blew my mind, and I struggle with it because you have to not just explain to somebody use the dishwasher instead of washing my hand, but it's
Yeah.
how you use the dishwasher. So you kind of have
Yeah.
to be there to
I
sort
still
of
think he
make.
needs a sink in his kitchen because
It's crazy. I'm telling you, it was
as a chef, I'm
craziness.
like, no, you need a
I,
sink to
I
wash
am
vegetables. And
Trust me, I am with you on this. I mean, granted, he wasn't like a huge cook, but and the kitchen was, of course, as an architect. So he designs these beautiful, they were called freos, which was like this freedom inspired house that was actually kind of modular in the sense that the way that the first house that he won him and his business partner won this grand prize in sustainable design. That's like for Austria, on behalf of Austria type of
Mhm.
stuff. It was really, really interesting. And the house has the walls kind of can be moved. So over time, as the family configuration changes, maybe you have kids when you're small, and then, when you're younger, you have small kids. And then as the kids
Mhm.
grow up and they grow out of the house, you can move things around in order without it looking like it was temporary, because that
Mhm.
wasn't the idea. But like it gave you the opportunity to change the configuration. So his concept was, this is the only house you're ever going to need, because as your family dynamics changes, you can move certain aspects of the house in order to
Yep.
do it. Plus he also won another prize because they created a pallet house that was, made out of pallets, that was just like to die for. I loved both of these houses. Luckily the models were kept in a place, so that became the office. Like let's go to the pallet house and like do work from there. And the one that was modular was so freaking cool because it was it was on a lake, and the whole back basically wall disappeared, and so you
Mm.
had this huge lake in front of you, and you could he's a brilliant architect. Him and
That's
his
awesome.
business partner are both brilliant architects. But
Well,
yes,
space
I
is a
am.
good example of like, all these little changes you make in your life, and the part you won't realize until you start doing them is it frees up so much space in your mind because 70% of our thought is repetitive.
Mhm.
So the repetition comes from regret and remorse, things we did that we wish we hadn't, things we wish we had done is like regret. And so the amount of repetitive thought in our minds as humans is so intense, and it's running in the background, and it's causing like aggression, it's causing anxiety, it's causing stress. And you might not know it. You really might say like, "Oh, I don't think about that stuff." But we all do
We all
because
do.
it's in our nature, because we are part of the earth.
Mm.
And so, as you start to make these changes and make better decisions for yourself and for the people and for the planet, it's freeing up all of this space to allow you to do greater and better things with your life.
I 100% agree with you. I think that that's exactly it. And you feel, and like you said, it's a cascading effect, right? It's almost like this win that you feel, so and you feel good using it, you feel good in that connection. You then free up all of that space, and it gives you this freedom to move into other directions. What do you find are some of the most either misunderstood or still difficult ones to kind of find the right solution where good doesn't maybe completely exist yet, but so you kind of have to move towards better, and this is what better is. Or which ones, look, we just don't have like a solution for it at all.
Well, I mean, here in the States, it's transportation. Unless you live in New York City, transportation's a nightmare. Um, right now I'm in Boulder, which I spend part of my time. And a couple of years ago, I bought an e-assist cargo bike. So it's one of those elongated bikes. You can put two kids in the back, or like a whole week's of groceries. And I live pretty far up the mountain. So I live 1,800 feet above town and about 7 miles away. I bought this bike and I realized, number one, going to town is a breeze because you're just coasting downhill and going really fast. But then I realized I can go to town, go to the gym, go to the grocery store, load up these huge bags with all my groceries, and pedal back to my house in only 7 minutes more had I driven. So not only am I getting like an hour of cardio a day, I'm not in a car. And Boulder is a great example of a town that did an amazing job of, we have, I think, the second highest amount of bike paths of any small town in America. And they're beautiful. They're like on creeks and they're manicured and I see zero people on cargo bikes here. Zero. There are cyclists who do it. I call them spandex gazelle. They're
Right.
like wrapped in spandex and they got the glasses and
I
they're
remember when
pedaling.
I worked at Microsoft, it was always like that in Redmond, Washington, is
Yeah.
like converting that the person who like goes to work that way.
And then last summer when I was in Copenhagen, I'm like,
It's a whole
these
other world
people
there.
would think it was insane how many cars are being driven in Boulder, Colorado. Because in Copenhagen, they're just riding on the streets in swarms. And I think about Boulder, I'm like, how is this affluent kind of quasi-sustainable town and almost nobody commuting on bikes? It's maybe
Right.
1% of the population.
Yeah, because it's also like you said it, because I remember when I was in Copenhagen, I love Copenhagen because of this. Also, Amsterdam, similar in that perspective. It's the mentality is like it doesn't matter what the weather is, right? Okay, so I just throw on a little like, raincoat and I'm fine. I remember that one of the days I went out to do a performance of the Music of the Plants and a whole presentation and stuff like that. And I was with my friend who is native, and so of course he was like, "Okay, we're grabbing bikes and off we go." And I was like,
Yep.
"Yes." And, it was raining in those days and didn't stop anybody.
No
You
one
just kind of
cares.
throw on,
Yeah.
and I spend a lot of time with so I spend a lot of time with Scandinavians. I have a lot of my students that are Scandinavian and Dutch. So, and it's just a completely different mentality. It's the mentality of you wear the right kind of clothes, you know how to do it, you know how to pack your stuff, it's not a really big deal. But we just are not raised that way to think that way at
Yeah.
all. Like I can't even tell you when I go down to Miami and I'm like, oh, mom, I'm going to go walk to whatever Navarro to the basically CVS equivalent, and she's like, oh no, it's too hot. Like you can't do that. I'm like, it's fine. And she's like, no, you're going to pass out. I'm like, it's a 5 minute walk. It's like I'm fine. And she's like,
Yeah.
well,
It is a lot of
everything.
conditioning. It's a lot of
It's a lot
conditioning.
of
Like,
conditioning.
and I hope, New York is growing in bike commuters. It is, they every year they just keep building more and more bike paths because in a lot of times you can actually get places faster than the subway.
Absolutely.
Definitely faster than the car, but you can cruise all over New York City in a bike path, and it keeps growing, and it's very exciting. But other than that, I mean, I would say that
What's the hardest one in a bathroom? You said we have 17 products. What's the hardest one?
um, I mean, we've done everything. We've even have tooth floss that not only does
I
it
have
come
that. I have
plastic
one that's
free.
just paper and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's
completely
paper.
combustible and it's
We
just
have a
paper.
little beautiful glass vial with the pull off thing, and that was easy. Tongue scrapers, shampoo, conditioner, the whole range of skincare, soaps. It's honestly like
What
I would
about
say if you're,
why
I,
are the tops still always made out of plastic? Like I
yeah.
can
So
buy
we,
something.
but here's the thing that's interesting about those tops. So if you go on our website, you'll see that everything comes with an aluminum lid,
Mm,
and that's for the purist. If you don't want to buy the top, you don't have to. products should never be sold with pumps or sprayers.
I
And the
hate
reason why
pumps.
is,
I hate pumps.
though they can last 15 years
I hate pumps.
and they are completely unrecyclable. There is no way to recycle this because it's too many parts. So we sell them separately. They're $5 and we tell people, if you want a pump, we'll sell it to you that fits this bottle. Don't throw it away. You can
Right.
reuse it over and over and over again. The fact that we have developed, talking about like how we're conditioned, a industry that puts a top or a pump on every single bottle is insane.
It's insane.
When you
It's
go to a
insane.
grocery store, nothing should have a pump or a sprayer on it. They should sell them on the side, and if you need it, you take one. But those things can last. I have ones that I use in my bathroom and kitchen I've had for 7 years. And you can throw them in the dishwasher when they just to clean them off again.
Yeah,
It's so
I
simple.
am an anti-pump person. Like I said, I'm my hair is my big thing, and
Yep.
I hate pump products. I just do not understand them. Besides the fact that I just don't like how they work, but it just seems for the same reasons. It's like, why would I ever want something like this? And I hate when
Yeah.
I find, a product and that's the only way that they get sold. And I do find, I have to say this, I think that in the beauty industry, I'm so happy for people like you and pioneers who are really kind of pushing it, because I have seen a change. Like there's Puro Bio here and another company, Neve, which I really enjoy. Puro Bio and specifically is really good at thinking about also, like I said, the compact where you just have to buy, the individual piece or, stuff like that, or getting rid of a lot of stuff that is not necessary. In the hair industry, I have to say that I feel like it's so behind. Like sure, bars, soaps, and shampoos and conditioners, great. But even once you start getting to like the deep mask world, it's all
Yeah.
plastic containers. You can't. And once you get into styling products, it's nuts. Even
Yeah.
it's really nuts. Like there's a lot of pump action, which is unnecessary,
Pump
completely
action.
unnecessary.
Yeah.
Completely unnecessary. And then there's a lot of other types of like just regular styling stuff, where you just say to yourself, why? Like
Yeah.
even a mousse, okay, I get it, because then they have like the plastic nozzle. And so I don't know how you solve the plastic. I've never seen anybody solve the
Well,
plastic nozzle.
those products need to just die. The mousse
Right. In that
spray,
case, you
aerosol
could use
stuff.
the pump, right? Because then you could just I have seen the kind of pump. And like you said, if you buy a pump that's like a foam pump, but then you
Yep.
just buy it once
Reuse
and
it.
then you just buy the thing. I do think it's totally possible. And I do think that people are willing once they learn, but today it's kind of sold as a specialty. It's not like you're not going to find it in Walgreens and in CVS and in things like that. And that's really where it needs to go. Not because it's about lowering the price or anything like that, but more because I do think that a lot of it is still ignorance. I think a lot of people do not think it's even possible. Like they
Yeah,
don't
a lot of
know.
people don't like, yes, they don't know it's possible. And yes, also they don't think about it.
Yeah, they don't think about
Yeah.
it. They don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't come
Like
in.
if you go on like our Amazon, because people buy our like
Hey,
Alpine
hey,
Provisions.
why are you
Yeah.
using Amazon?
I
We're not
don't
going to get into
always,
that one.
yeah, let's not get into that. But we sell on Amazon because we have to. If we want to survive as a brand right now, you have to sell on Amazon and you have to have your own website. Obviously, we much rather people go to our website, but you'll
Absolutely.
lose 30% of customers if you don't sell on Amazon. So
Right, right.
if you go
I
on our
get it.
Amazon, there's people who buy Alpine Provisions because it looks cool and it has great scent. But there's people who literally complain that it's in an aluminum bottle.
No.
Yeah, yeah. The only bad reviews we have is because it's in an aluminum bottle, or people will buy it and they don't see the disclaimer that you have to buy a pump, and they'll be like, "This product's so stupid; it doesn't come with a pump." And
You're
I'm
just
like,
like, oh
ah.
my
And then you
goodness.
can't take those reviews down, so you just have to fight through it. And you're like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god." I don't even
Nuts.
look at it anymore because I saw a few of them and I was like, ugh.
It's again, it's education, but it's education that has to start really young, to be honest, because
Yeah,
again, we're conditioned from the very beginning. And when you can go to TJ Maxx and you can get everything and it's just plastic and all these types of pieces, it's sad, but it's so much of it is ignorance. It's they don't think about it because again, you've almost been taught that you're not supposed to think about it because if it was possible, they'd offer it to you that way. So if you don't see it, it's because not because somebody's trying to hide it from you, but because it doesn't exist. And it's like, no, that's not how it works type of thing.
Yep. Yep.
It's fascinating, and I think it's great. So I'm as we're kind of starting to wrap up everything, I got to get to the plants because I know that that's, that's what we were supposed. I mean, in my mind, it makes perfect sense because in my mind, this whole conversation goes to what I was saying, where the more you connect, the more you want to find people like you because you want to know what's out there. And especially even what you were talking about in the beginning with the nut milks and stuff like that. Don't even get me started on how some of these nuts are actually grown as plants. We're not going to go there because it's another thing that is like another peeps discussion. But I do agree with you 100% that we have to learn how, if I want certain things, I can have them in their more purest form, let's say it in that way, without it being a super huge headache. Because I
Yep.
also myself have made nut milk myself for years when I lived in a different kind of house and a different spacing and all kinds of, and I loved it. I loved the, I live in the middle of slow food movement. I live here
Mhm.
in the Turin, the province of Turin. So you have that slow food movement. A lot of people aren't into it. But I'm really curious for you as to like, as you're going forward and as you're moving through all these different things, where do the plants as plants, not just as ingredients, not just as, things that we're talking about, like that you use, but I'm like, where do the plants fit in this for you?
I mean, to me, plants have probably the solution to 99% of what is happening on Earth.
Mm.
And, I practice spagyric alchemy, which is one of the oldest forms of alchemy that Paracelsus was one of the first alchemists who figured out that, we look at plants like to solve a problem, but we don't understand the depth of intelligence that plants have and that they evolved with us.
Mm-hmm.
And one plant can be used 1,000 different ways. So you can cook with a plant, you can make medicine with a plant, you can turn plants into fiber, and they're incredible and they're regenerative and they can fix the soil and they can hold the soil and they can keep the soil nutrient dense. But we've gotten into this way of manipulating things to do what we want, but we don't understand that when we strive to manipulate something like a plant to do what we want, we have ruined the intelligence of that being. And it's that way with animals, it's that way with plants, it's that way with people. We have to like take the time, slow down, understand what is the possibility with plants and how to do it correctly so that they can help us coexist. And it sounds very woo woo and esoteric, but it's actually not. It's like the oldest form of like agriculture. Understand your land, understand your plants, understand the world you're living in. How can these plants help us live better lives? And I always kind of get a little sad when I see like a product being sold that is a is utilizing plants incorrectly because people aren't going to have a good experience with them. They're not really going to solve your cold or your rash or your, whatever's working, whatever you're having to deal with. Or when I see like bamboo fabrics being sold, but bamboo really wasn't meant to be a fiber because it takes so many chemicals to turn it into soft fabric. But we have so many plants that are soft fabric. So I think a lot of it is just taking the time to understand how to use plants correctly, and we can grow from that place. But we've
Yeah. You,
forgotten this wisdom.
yeah, you've said something there that I think is I'm going to take away from, which is, you know, if the plant requires you to do super heroic type things in order to use in the way that you want to use, then that's probably not the right plant for it, right?
Hmm.
That's what coevolution is. Coevolution makes things easier. Coevolution doesn't convolute things. So if you have to use a bunch of chemicals in order to, get to a fiber, if instead it's not just in biomimicry, say beat, heat, and treat. Like if you've got
Yeah,
to beat, heat, and
that
treat
was my that
everything,
was my TED talk, biomimicry. Beat,
yeah,
heat, beat, and treat.
it's horrible. And it's like if you've
Yeah.
got to go with beat, heat, and treat, you're not using and you're not working in co-creation. At that point, you're just manipulation, right? Like
Yep.
And let's just call a spade, right? We need to start to, just the same as we as consumers need to realize that we have the power. I do think we also have to realize that we have voices, and that our
Mhm.
voices are literally about saying this is not okay, and that, manipulation of plants as well as animals. I think with animals it's a little bit easier for some people to see because there is a face attached to it, and there's an anthropomorphism that can happen that's natural in that perspective. But I think when it comes to plants, when people talk to me about, the idea of, oh, I'm going to use this plant because that's natural, and I'm like, if you're having to beat the crap out of that plant in order to get to that thing, that's not natural. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's not get into that. And as you said, I think we can learn so much, and we hear it all the time, that the best kind of ways to work with a plant is because the plant told you the best way to work. And I think if we just
Mhm.
gave ourselves that space and slowed down a little bit and gave ourselves that space to be able to not say I have to manipulate this into being, but instead I'm going to, instead listen for the response. Oh my God, that would just change everything. Just change
Overnight.
it overnight. So, as we close this up, any last words of wisdom that you want
No,
to share
thanks
with
for
everybody
doing
else?
this podcast and spreading the good word.
Well, I'm excited. I will definitely be including Pangea Organics, Alpine. Give me the difference between the two for somebody who's never heard about
So Pangea is like luxury organic skincare.
them.
Alpine is more like shampoo, conditioner, body wash. And then Uja de Shek, which is my fine fragrance brand, is a plant only fine fragrance company. And I can send you the links if you can't find
Yeah,
them.
we're definitely going to put all the links into the show notes because, we want them all there. We want everybody to be able to click on them and find them. Preferably go buy directly from the website, not
Yes,
Amazon.
not from Amazon. Exactly.
And are they
Please.
available anywhere? Like, are there restrictions? Is it US only?
Alpine and Uja de Sheks we ship globally. Pangea we cannot ship to Europe because of a trademark issue. But the rest of the world we can.
I understand that. I understand that. When I first moved to Damanhur, the first regional community I lived in was called Pangea. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool.
Now they're called Oropan. They kind of change things around, but they're it's a whole other story also. Thank you, Joshua. This has been such a great conversation, and I'm glad that we did get into this because I do. It's one of those topics I don't talk about enough, even though it's a very, very, very prominent part of my life in the way of, anybody who knows me, I am a slow shopper. I am a slow, slow, slow shopper because I like study and hold it and think about it and like look at the ingredients. My God, clothing is impossible. My friend always laughs at me because my wardrobe is like teeny tiny compared to what you would expect for, a woman. Mine is just like tiny, and my friend was talking to me about changing, seasonal clothing, and I'm like, seasonal clothing, man, what are you talking, like, I don't have any seasonal clothing. I It took me 2 years to buy a coat because I had to find somebody that was making a coat handmade out of natural fibers that was like funky and stuff. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, please, I don't have like, my wardrobe is teeny tiny compared of stuff because I just don't. The one place I struggle, and I found finally a shoe company that I love, but they're in the United States, so I can only buy them when I'm in the United States. But one of the things I love about them, it's Soft Star shoes, which I adore. They're in Oregon.
They're
Everything
called soft
handmade,
serve.
soft star
Soft star.
shoes. And what I love is when they sent me my shoes, which are all custom made, you give them you have to take pictures and size and all this thing, was super cool. But the envelope that those shoes came in, literally it had instructions on how to refold it and then just pop it in the mail.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
it was really cool. It was like this kind of, it wasn't exactly paper, but it was something, a paper-like material. And then it had these fold marks. And then when you folded it the way it had, the label showed up. And they were
That's
like, you
cool.
just pop that back in the mail because we
That's cool.
use the same ones over and over again to ship the shoes to people. So my shoes don't have any kind of box or anything like that. They just come with that. And that's it.
That's cool. I'll check them out.
I love them. I love them so much. I have my pair of hiking boots from them, which are, barefoot hiking boots, and a pair of like little ballerinas. And I was waiting for them to redo this one other kind that I want. So the next time, because I literally, shoes are horrible too, but we're not going to get into that too. It's like trying to find shoes that are really all natural products or not made with crap is not easy. Anyway,
Agree.
we're going to stop here because if not, we're going to keep going over and over and over again. And I'm so grateful. I'll make sure I put everything in the show notes. And for everybody who's listening, if you want to find out about any of these, come click on the show notes. And remember, these are the types of discussions that we're having inside of the Naturally Conscious community. Because just as we were talking about, Joshua and I were talking about, these are not the kinds of things where you just wake up one morning and you know everything. We don't have solutions for some of them. Some of them have solutions, but they're obscured. And we want to have a place where we can like really get into the nitty gritty details of it and, be curious and ask questions and even do global movements and really push companies to listen to us. So come on into the Naturally Conscious community, which everything is in the show notes. And if you have any specific topics that you want to talk about, please just contact me directly. And I'm happy for us to just open the floor and look at how can we solve this problem together, creating an ecosystem that we can all live in. That's
Couldn't have
it.
said it better myself.
And that's it. Remember to resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. To continue these conversations, join us in the Naturally Conscious community, your premier online ecosystem for plant reawakening and accelerated evolution and co-creation with other kin. Here, you'll find expansive discussions, interactive courses, live events, and supportive group programs like the Plant Wisdom Book Club and the Sprouts Writing and Creativity Group. Connect with like-minded individuals collaborating with plants to integrate these insights into life. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. That's it for me, Tigria Gardenia, and my plant collaborators. Until next time, remember, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. I'm out. Bye.